The first thing I did after being reborn was to throw away the newborn me and willingly adopt the fake daughter, Sabrina. It was all because in my previous life, I exposed Sabrina's secret of being pregnant before marriage. She ran crying into the traffic and was hit by a car, dying instantly. My parents felt heartbroken for her and vowed never to let her suffer again in this life, and my existence was the greatest threat to her. When I was lying in the snow, close to death, a couple adopted me. So this time, I no longer had to endure the cold and hunger, nor watch Sabrina drool over the cake in her hands. When I met my biological parents again, I smiled and said to them, "Thank you for abandoning me back then." In my previous life, the nanny swapped me with the fake heiress, Sabrina. I was thrown into an orphanage by the nanny and endured years of abuse. Meanwhile, Sabrina became the cherished princess. Later, I finally found my biological parents. Although they kept me, they never truly liked me. Even when I was hospitalized sick, they were busy celebrating Sabrina's birthday. While I was under anesthesia, my father, who never contacted me voluntarily, called me dozens of times. It wasn't out of concern, but to urge me to wish Sabrina a happy birthday after the surgery. They came over and immediately started yelling at me. "You're so selfish. Why won't you bless your sister? Why must you ruin her birthday? Are you trying to accuse her of being pregnant before marriage?" I defended myself. I didn't. Sabrina glared at me, trembling all over from crying, and in a moment of impulse, ran into the traffic, getting caught under a truck. My parents saw it and screamed in agony. Then they rushed over and grabbed my neck. "You killed her. You killed my precious daughter. Give her back to me." My heart ached fiercely, nearly suffocating me. Lying in the hospital bed, I gradually lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I found that both my parents and I had been reborn. This time, after Mom gave birth to me, she didn't let the nurse take me to the incubator. She and Dad placed me in a bamboo basket, and then secretly took me out of the hospital. They didn't wait for the nanny to take me away. Instead, they took the initiative to ask the nanny to adopt her own child, Sabrina. Then Mom and Dad drove for 5 hours and abandoned me in the snow, helplessly struggling inside the bamboo basket. I could only hear my parents as they walked away, still discussing how many cans of imported formula costing thousands to buy for Sabrina. Snow fell on me, piling up thicker and thicker. My heart grew colder and colder. My small hand clenched the edge of my clothes. I never expected them to just throw me away. In the last life, at first, they didn't hate me this much. They did despise my dark skin and my eyes that protruded from being so thin. But after all, I was their child. When they saw the bruises on my body, they felt a pang of pity and wanted to hold me. Just as my mother's warm arms touched me, Sabrina began to cry. Bing her red eyes, she sobbed dramatically. "Mom, Dad, I stole my sister's life. I'm really sorry. I'll leave, okay?" But the smile in her eyes wasn't well hidden. Using clumsy acting, she stood still without moving. Yet she kept shouting that she wanted to leave and give back the life of a rich girl to me. My parents just fell for it. They immediately withdrew their arms, and their eyes turned icy cold as they looked at me. "Since you're back, don't think about scheming to bully Sabrina, and don't even think about driving her away. She's also an owner here. We won't abandon her," they coaxed Sabrina, promising to buy her a doll. I lowered my head, feeling somewhat at a loss. My parents glanced at me briefly and said, "Carry your luggage upstairs yourself." Then they supported Sabrina as they left, saying they were taking her to a Western restaurant to eat. As I struggled to move upward with the heavy luggage, tears slipped down uncontrollably, big and heavy. What's even more ridiculous is that in this life, for Sabrina, they simply threw me away. They wouldn't abandon Sabrina, but they would abandon their own biological daughter. I lay in the bamboo basket, my body gradually losing warmth. My consciousness was about to fade. Suddenly, a gentle female voice sounded from afar. I didn't expect such heavy snow in Z City. "Someone." I began to struggle desperately, but my frozen body was too weak to move. All I could hear was the distant conversation fading away. They were about to leave. I was anxious and helpless, bursting into tears. Then I heard footsteps running over. A woman wearing a wool coat held me in her arms and said, "Where did this child come from?" So pitiful. I reached out my hand, clutching tightly at her wool scarf. The fear of being abandoned by my biological parents still filled my body. Please don't leave me. She reached out, touched my cheek, and said to the man beside her, with our health conditions, we can't have children of our own anymore. Why don't we take her home? I opened my mouth at the right moment, making a few sounds as if calling out to Daddy and Mommy. The man beside me laughed. This child looks very smart. Good. And just like that, I had parents again. My adoptive mother, Margaret, my mom, took me home. It was a very large house. Here, I received the kind of treatment that only Sabrina had before. I wouldn't go hungry or cold, could drink warm milk before bed, and wouldn't be locked outside in the yard all night. Only occasionally, when I fell asleep, I would still dream about things from my past life. I dreamed that Sabrina pushed me to the ground, then poured my food into the dog's bowl. Mom and Dad sat at the dining table, only pretending to mediate half-heartedly. Sabrina, don't cause trouble with her during meals. At that time, I worked part-time at a small restaurant, serving dishes, and saved up 1,000 yuan in half a year to buy Sabrina a dress. I just hoped she would stop bullying me. I wanted my parents to look at me more kindly, but when Sabrina put on the dress, she cried. Saying it hurt her body, Mom rushed over anxiously and found a needle hidden inside the dress. I wanted to explain that the dress was delivered directly from the store, still in its packaging, and no one had touched it in between. But before I could say a word, Dad slapped me across the face. They completely lost it and all accused me at once. You were fine in the orphanage, so why did you come looking for us? The moment you showed up, you took away the love we had for Sabrina, and now you're bullying her. I collapsed to the ground and cried. I'm clearly their biological child. Why can't I look for them? It turned out they never wanted me at all. I looked at the pearl necklace around Sabrina's neck. Just one piece of her jewelry was worth tens of thousands. And she wore a different designer brand every day. Meanwhile, I could only wear the same clothes from the orphanage, barely scraping by. Sabrina noticed my gaze and fearfully shrank back. Mom and Dad saw this, grabbed my arm, and locked me in the basement. They were completely oblivious to the fact that I was already sick, my belly swollen large while my limbs were nothing but skin and bones. I cried, telling them I was ill, but the only response was the loud bang of the iron door slamming shut. The hunger gnawing at my belly, the pain in my body, and the care I longed for but never received, all of it made me feel so miserable. Suddenly, a gentle song floated through the air. At the same time, a warm embrace wrapped around me. My entire being was filled with a comforting fragrance. Baby, don't cry anymore. You must have had a nightmare. It was Margaret's voice. My adoptive father, Peter, my dad, was beside me reading a fairy tale. The last line was, "It's all right now, dear little princess. The evil dragon will surely be slain in the end." I reached out my small hand and tightly grasped Margaret's finger. My tear-streaked face finally broke into a smile. It's okay now, it's okay now. I have a mom and dad. More than 10 years after being reborn, I had become a much livelier girl. While I was kicking a ball at the door, a car arrived at the villa next door. Mom said the villa next door, which had been empty for a long time, had finally been bought. However, I never expected that the ones getting out of the car would be my biological parents, Charles, Victoria, and Sabrina. The moment they saw me, their expressions were a mix of surprise and disgust. It was a bitter irony. My own parents were displeased to see their child still alive. Victoria frowned and pretended not to recognize me, saying, "Where did this wild girl come from? Get lost, we have nothing to do with you. Sabrina is our only daughter, don't try to latch onto us." I smiled faintly. She must have misunderstood. She probably thought I was coming to them like last time, trying to claim them as my parents. But they didn't want to acknowledge me, and frankly, I never wanted to acknowledge them either. I immediately turned around, wanting to leave. Suddenly, a pale little hand tightly grabbed my cloak. It was Sabrina. She still wore the same old smile. "Hello, sister. This ball is so beautiful. Can you give it to me?" But she never hid the malice in her eyes. I suddenly suspected that she had been reborn too. "Sierra, don't snatch the ball. Sabrina likes." Charles strode over, looking down at me from above. I shook my head. This ball was originally mine. Did he still think I was that poor soul from the last life who listened to his every whim? I'm not called Sierra. I'm Elena, the apple of Mom and Dad's eyes. I lifted my head, my voice proud. Sierra was the name I had in my previous life. Just then, Mom came out hurriedly, wearing an apron. She looked at these strangers warily. I turned and snuggled into Mom's arms, softly saying, "Mom, is the sweet and sour pork ready? I'm so hungry." Mom held me in her arms and said gently, "All right, we'll wait for Dad to get off work and come home. Then we can eat." Ignoring the people behind me, I took Mom's hand and walked inside. I could feel their astonished gazes still fixed on my delicate princess dress. In the last life, they despised me for coming from the orphanage, dirty and thin, with dull yellow hair like a scrawny little monkey. They looked down on me so much that when Sabrina did many bad things, they didn't hesitate to blame me. But in this life, my adoptive parents raised me well because I loved drinking milk. I was even taller than Sabrina, fair-skinned and clean, obviously a cherished child. In this life, I deliberately avoided any interaction with them. Sabrina got out of school at the same time as me, so I stayed by the school gate to do some homework before heading home. My biological parents liked to chat on the balcony next door, occasionally glancing over. I removed all my dolls from the balcony and stopped painting there. But a few days later, the bad thing still happened. My biological parents showed up with the police, accusing me of stealing their money. I didn't. I said firmly. It was the same in my last life. Sabrina liked to sneak money from the house and then frame me. I kept insisting that I didn't do it, but unexpectedly, Sabrina secretly slipped one roll of money into my backpack and took the rest away. When Mom and Dad found out, they were so angry they threw me into the pitch-black basement and didn't give me any food for 3 days. In this life, I had been deliberately avoiding them. They had no reason to blame me. But to my surprise, my biological parents insisted that I had sneaked into their house to steal money while they were away. Sabrina said she saw it. "It was you who stole it. Don't we know your true nature by now?" Based on a brief time spent with me in the previous life, they thought they understood me well. My adoptive parents stood behind me protectively, like guarding a little chick. Our precious child, whom we've cared for since birth, would never do such a thing. The moment these words were spoken, my biological parents suddenly froze. Their eyes filled with a complicated expression. They probably never imagined that I could also be spoiled into a carefree little princess. Sabrina quietly tugged at their sleeves. They then sneered coldly and continued. "You don't know, do you? This time we secretly installed surveillance at home just to expose your lies. You refused to admit it before, so this time you can just wait to confess." At these words, Sabrina's face turned pale. It seemed she was unaware of the surveillance. Sabrina grabbed my biological parents' hands and forced a strained smile, saying, "Let's go, Mom and Dad. I don't want to argue over this money anymore." But they firmly said, "No, Sabrina, we can't let you be wronged. Come on, let's see how this clown is stealing the money." 10 minutes later, their faces turned pale as they watched the surveillance footage. Seeing Sabrina secretly take stack after stack of bills from the safe, and then stuff them into her bag, they looked at Sabrina, sighing with sympathy. "Oh dear, if you need money, we would have just given it to you directly. How could you steal like this?" I sneered inwardly. "Last time, when you were convinced I was the one stealing, why didn't you treat me like this?" The reason she stole money and didn't want to tell you all is because she's secretly supporting a punk boyfriend. On the outside, although she's already 18, she's been held back a grade because of her poor grades. And you still hope she could become the top scorer? Well, now even without the top score, you're about to have a grandchild soon. The college entrance exam is getting closer and closer. This time I'm determined to get a good score. After evening study, I carried my heavy backpack home. But on the way, I ran into Sabrina coming out of a hotel. She froze for a moment. Then her eyes filled with resentment and warning. I quickly turned my head, pretending not to see. When I reached my front door, I saw my biological parents peeking out from the villa next door. For the first time, they spoke to me. "Have you seen Sabrina? She didn't come home all night last night." We've looked for her several times and even reported it to the police, but there's no news." They were pacing anxiously. I shook my head, then walked coldly into the house. I'm done caring about their matters. In the previous life, when the trash from Sabrina's room was thrown out, I was so hungry I couldn't stand it, and quietly rummaged through it, hoping to find something to eat. But what I found was a pregnancy test. It had 2 lines on it. Dad happened to walk by and, furious, kicked me in the stomach. "You damn girl, how can you be so improper? Have you been fooling around with other men?" I was terrified, afraid they would beat me again, so I crouched down, holding my head and trembling. No, I saw the nanny throw out the trash from Sabrina's room. I thought it was leftover snacks from her, so I rummaged through it to find something to eat. But Sabrina hit a nerve and exploded. "Don't talk nonsense. There have been so many repair workers and new nannies coming in these past few days. What right do you have to say this pregnancy? Fine, you actually dare to accuse your sister of being pregnant out of wedlock? When you were born, I should have just strangled you." After saying this, Charles slapped me. I fell to the ground from the blow. Tears kept streaming down. Sometimes I wished I had been strangled at birth. That way, I wouldn't have to suffer so much. This time I wouldn't meddle. After a while, I went to the hospital for a checkup with the college entrance exam approaching. I took my health seriously, fortunately, because in this life, I never lacked food or clothing and lived happily. My body was perfectly fine. I was putting the checklist into my backpack when I saw my biological parents come in with Sabrina. Sabrina's belly had grown quite a bit, but since she had gained weight recently, it didn't look so obvious. She struggled as if someone was trying to kidnap her. "I told you I'm fine. I don't want to be checked." But Victoria held her tightly, dragging her further into the hospital. "Sabrina, you must be sick. Listen to Mom, let's get you checked. No matter the cost, we'll treat you. Don't be afraid." In my previous life, after I got sick, my belly swelled up a lot. They probably thought Sabrina had the same illness. I couldn't help but recall that time when I showed her the cancer diagnosis. It was the first time she touched my head. I thought she would finally show me some pity, but the next moment she tentatively said, "Good child, how about we stop the treatment?" She hesitated and said, "Your dad wants to retire in Paris. Your sister needs money to study abroad. The family is under a lot of pressure, and I'm afraid they can't afford your expenses." In the end, I still saved up some money myself to stay in the hospital. I lowered my head, pressed down my baseball cap, and suppressed the slight bitterness in my heart. I sat quietly in the chair, ready to wait for the results of the next test. Suddenly, an auntie passed by them and somewhat surprised reminded, "Oh dear, is this girl pregnant? Don't hold her like that. You'll be squeezing her belly." Her biological parents screamed like madmen, shouting, "Are you crazy? Our daughter is so outstanding. How could she possibly do such a thing? She's even preparing for the college entrance exam. Spreading rumors is illegal. Watch out or I'll call the police." Victoria immediately went to grab the woman's face. The aunt was startled, hunched her shoulders and walked away, muttering as she left, "She's really got issues. I've seen so many pregnant women. How could I be mistaken?" Sabrina started crying again. "I told you I'm fine. But you insisted I come here. Now look, someone is verbally abusing me. How can I stand this?" She tried to rush outside again. Victoria probably remembered how Sabrina died in her previous life, and was so frightened that she held her back tightly. Then tears streamed down her weathered face as she said, "Forget it, we won't watch anymore. As long as you're not in pain or discomfort, that's enough." Charles sighed deeply behind me, worry etched on his face. "Forget it, darling. If your illness is really serious, I'd spend billions to save you." Suddenly, Sabrina turned her head and saw me. She stopped, her gaze sharp and filled with venomous hatred. "Are you enjoying my misery?" she spat, then looked toward my biological parents, hoping they would back her up like before. But this time they just patted Sabrina on the shoulder, their tone a bit conciliatory. "Sweetheart, don't be like that. She's the top of your grade at school. We should learn more from her." I sneered, ignoring them completely, and paying no mind to the furious expression twisting Sabrina's face. Grades are truly a wonderful thing. They can buy the love of biological parents. But I don't want that false love. My adoptive parents are the ones who truly raised me and truly love me. After returning home, I begged my adopted parents to move quickly with me. They had already been planning the same. The college entrance exam was just weeks away, and I didn't want my biological parents to cause any trouble, so I stayed calm and steady until after the exam. When the results came out, I was still first in my grade, and was admitted to my dream top university. The school invited me to give a speech to all the students and parents. I memorized the speech for 3 days, ready to share all my insights with everyone. But halfway through my speech, my biological parents suddenly stood up and shouted excitedly, "Daughter, it turns out you are our real daughter." My adoptive parents sat in the front row of the audience, their faces tinged with awkwardness. They had just realized that the detestable couple were my biological parents. There was a reluctant tenderness in my adoptive parents' eyes. They clearly didn't want me to leave. I gave them a reassuring look, then loudly declared, "My real parents are sitting right here in the front row. To these two, please do not interrupt my speech." But to my surprise, my biological parents immediately pulled out a DNA test report, tearfully crying and shouting, "You are our flesh and blood. Why won't you acknowledge us?" The entire hall erupted into a commotion, boiling over like a pot about to burst. I pressed my lips together. They were trying to use the whole school's opinion to force me to accept them. I was just thinking of a solution when suddenly a teacher burst in shouting, "Who is Sabrina's parent? She just gave birth in the bathroom. You need to go check on her." As soon as those words came out, the whole place erupted again. My biological parents were so furious. Their eyes were about to burst. Sabrina had always been flashy at school and liked to bully classmates. Teachers often called her parents in, so everyone knew they were Sabrina's parents. This time they had completely lost face. I watched my biological parents, eyes red, rush out. I followed the gossiping crowd to the bathroom. Inside, Sabrina sat slumped on the floor, drenched in sweat, her hair soaking wet. My biological parents, seeing Sabrina like this, felt both heartache and the urge to scream. Yet they couldn't bring themselves to do it. They kept wailing, "My God, aren't you trying to kill your own parents? Isn't this a crime?" Behind them stood the entire school faculty and students, all wide-eyed, watching this bizarre scene unfold. Sabrina looked at the two people screaming before her, her eyes burning with anger as she said coldly, "You're not even my real parents, so who are you calling that?" The moment I said that, my biological parents felt even worse. Those words were like stabbing them right in the heart. They stopped crying and wailing, standing there dumbfounded as if they had gone mad. A pang of sympathy stirred in my heart. Sabrina's condition was largely the result of their spoiling her. Truly indulging a child can be as harmful as harming one. I shook my head and took my adopted parents' hands, leaving the place behind. Although the speech was interrupted, my biological parents' scheme to force me to acknowledge them was also foiled. From today onward, everyone would only talk about Sabrina having a child. No one would care who my biological parents were. Public opinion wouldn't affect me. I relaxed and spent the afternoon shopping with my adoptive parents, returning home laden with bags. But from a distance, I could already see my biological parents lurking outside our door. "My dear daughter is back." As soon as they saw me, they smiled warmly. I took a step back and gently shook my head. "I'm not your daughter." It was just like the way they had coldly said to me back then. "Why did you come looking for us?" My biological parents awkwardly scratched their noses and sleeves. "Oh, you don't know? When you were little, you were stolen and abandoned by someone else." Hearing this, anger welled up from deep within me. "Wasn't it you who abandoned me? Why blame it on someone else? If you threw me away and didn't want me, then don't come looking for me again. I will never have parents like you." The shadow of being abandoned again and again surged up, and I was furious. I could feel my eyes stinging. I held it in tightly, not letting myself cry out loud. They weren't worth my tears. These words made my biological parents' faces flush red, and then pale repeatedly. They widened their eyes, panicked as their truth was exposed, then tearfully said, "Back then things were complicated. We just want to make it up to you now. We know you've been wronged. It hasn't been easy for you all these years. But we are your birth parents after all. I shook my head and took the arms of my adoptive parents, calmly walking into the house. Our laughter and cheerful voices occasionally spilled out from the doorway, making those two people standing outside look even more miserable and ridiculous. They bent over as if our happiness was hurting them, yet they still didn't leave. For several days, they stayed there. Whenever we stepped outside, they would try to talk to us. Today, my mother was about to go out to buy groceries when my biological parents approached her, smiling ingratiatingly and said, "Sister, you really live a good life. This hairpin is so beautiful, with so many diamonds." Margaret sneered coldly, then proudly said, "My precious daughter got into a top school, and the school gave her a scholarship. She took out tens of thousands to buy this for me. It's all real diamonds." My biological parents' expressions immediately fell, and they muttered quietly, "That girl, whenever there's something good, she only thinks about you. What about us?" Margaret was about to argue with them when suddenly, Sabrina appeared. She wore heavy, exaggerated makeup with dark purple eyeshadow around her eyes, and carried a strong smell of smoke and alcohol. "Mom, Dad, why are you ignoring me? My life has been really miserable lately." Sabrina grabbed the clothes of my biological parents, not letting them leave. My biological parents sighed heavily when they saw Sabrina like this. Sabrina was the child they had loved for 2 lifetimes, but in the end, she was also the one who brought them shame. I knew my biological parents' personalities well, stubborn and obsessed with saving face. Back when I came to them, they actually didn't want me. They even said, "Actually, having Sabrina alone is enough." But just for the sake of appearances, they forced themselves to keep me. This time, their reputation was completely ruined. How could they possibly accept Sabrina again? Moreover, Sabrina was sly and manipulative, skilled in every deceit, showing no sign of turning over a new leaf. My biological parents shook their heads and said, "Sabrina, you weren't born to us anyway. Go find that nanny of yours or maybe your punk boyfriend from the streets. Let him take care of you." Sabrina immediately roared, "You raised me for nearly 20 years, and now you suddenly say you won't? Don't you have any shame? That bastard has been lying to me all along. After I gave birth to that child, he just ran off. I couldn't find him anywhere in both this life and the last. It's all been sweet talk and lies. As for that nanny, she took all the money I had saved up and died on the run. You two are the only family I have left. I haven't even been able to afford food lately. Please don't abandon me. In my last life, didn't you treat me well? Why are you throwing me away now?" Sabrina cried out sharply, tearing at their clothes like a madwoman. My mother, holding a basket of vegetables, was startled by the scene. I had been hiding behind the ornate iron gate, but hearing the commotion, I quickly came out and pulled my mother inside. I patted my chest, terrified by what I was witnessing. Suddenly, my biological parents caught onto a key phrase and questioned Sabrina. "Have you been reborn in this life as well?" Sabrina sneered. "Yeah, haven't you noticed? All along I spoke calmly. I've been reborn too." My biological parents turned their heads, their lips trembling slightly. "No wonder sometimes you speak so strangely, as if you know everything. So you knew about all those things too?" Their eyes dimmed, their faces seeming to fade like a dull gray statue. "No wonder you won't. Elena, how can we make it up to you?" Sabrina tore at them wildly. "At a time like this, you're still thinking about her? Why don't you think about me? I hate you." I rubbed my forehead. The scene before me was too chaotic. I was about to call the police when they had already arrived. They arrested Sabrina and said, "You are suspected of multiple crimes. Abandoning your own child, stealing all your parents' property. We need to take you into custody." Sabrina cried pitifully as she was dragged away. My biological parents crouched on the ground, covering their heads. "It's all gone. Everything's gone. Sabrina has spent all our money, and our own daughter doesn't even acknowledge us anymore." I just watched from afar, smiled, and then left with my real mom and dad. They gave me everything without reservation. From now on, I will repay them 100-fold, 1,000-fold. My new life begins from this very moment. Here I come, future.